Steam filled the tiled bathroom, curling around the small, trembling form of a child. Emma Thornton's hands, red and raw, clutched the rim of the tub, 7 years old and shivering despite the scalding water that surrounded her. "Please, it hurts. The water's too hot," she cried, her voice a whisper swallowed by the hiss of running water. Her stepmother, Catherine, stood above her, elegant even in her casual attire, not a strand of auburn hair out of place. She smiled, a slow, painted smile that never reached her eyes. "You'll wash until I say you're clean," she said, pressing Emma's shoulder down. Just then the heavy oak door creaked open. "What is going on here?" A voice thundered through the steam. The child froze. Her father had returned earlier than anyone expected. The mansion was quiet, too quiet for a home that once pulsed with laughter. Only the sound of running water broke the silence, faint through the marble corridors of the Thornton estate outside Chicago. Jack Thornton, founder and CEO of Thornton Renewables, had not planned to return home that afternoon. A canceled board meeting, a missed flight, small inconveniences that led him back to the house he had built for his late wife and their 2 children. Jack steered his Tesla Model S up the winding driveway, autumn leaves swirling in his wake. 45 years old, with salt and pepper hair at his temples and eyes that carried the weight of both success and loss. The past 18 months had been a blur of meetings, expansions, and fundraisers. Working, always working, since Amanda died. It was easier than coming home to the empty space she left behind. As he entered the grand foyer, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, the light dimmed by drawn curtains. The scent of jasmine candles and disinfectant hit him. Too strong, artificial, masking something else. "Catherine," he called, his voice echoing. No answer. He climbed the stairs, noting the untouched breakfast tray at the foot of the hallway. Emma's small cup of milk still sat there, warm and curdling. He frowned. His daughter loved her morning milk with honey, just as Amanda used to prepare it. Then came the sound, faint, stifled sobbing, from the bathroom at the end of the hall. His heart skipped. He reached the door, hearing water splashing, a harsh voice scolding, "Stop crying, you made this mess yourself." He pushed the door open. Steam poured out, and there stood Catherine in her silk robe, looming over Emma, who knelt in the scalding tub. His daughter's small body was shaking, her hair plastered to her forehead, her skin an angry red. For a moment, time froze. "What in God's name are you doing?" Jack's voice cut through the haze. Catherine spun, startled, her expression changing in an instant from irritation to wide-eyed innocence. "Jack, I didn't hear you come in." Her voice honeyed now. Emma slipped. She spilled shampoo into the water. "I was just helping her clean up." Emma's eyes, wide and glossy, darted to her father, then back to Catherine. Her lips parted, but no words came. She only stared, trembling. Jack crossed the room in 3 strides, lifting Emma out of the tub. The water steamed, too hot even against his arm, as he reached in. He wrapped her in a towel, feeling the raw heat of her skin beneath it. "Slipped," he repeated, his tone low. "This isn't slipping, Catherine. She's burned." "She's fine," Catherine insisted too quickly. "You know how sensitive she is, dramatizing, always." Emma's small hand clung to Jack's shirt. She didn't cry, just pressed her face into his chest as though trying to disappear. He looked at Catherine. Her smile had faltered, but she held her ground, unblinking. "I'm taking her to Dr. Harris," he said. Catherine's tone changed, sharp and cold. "That's unnecessary. The doctor will just exaggerate." Jack cut her off. "I said I'm taking her." Richard Harris frowned as he examined Emma's reddened hands and the faint blistering on her forearms. The pediatrician was in his 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the patience of someone who had seen too much in his career. "It's mild scalding," he said carefully. "Could have been worse. You caught it early." Jack watched as the doctor bandaged her arms, his chest tight. Emma sat silently, not flinching, not even when the antiseptic stung. "Has this happened before?" Dr. Harris asked quietly when Catherine stepped into the hall to take a call. Jack hesitated. "She said it was an accident." The doctor's eyes softened. "And Emma? What does she say?" Emma stared at the floor. "I spilled the bottle," she whispered, her voice rehearsed. Dr. Harris's brow furrowed, but he said nothing more. He handed Jack the discharge papers. Keep the water lukewarm next time. Then lower. And Jack, trust your instincts. Kids don't always tell the whole truth, especially when they're afraid. Jack nodded, unease twisting inside him. When they returned home, the house was spotless. Catherine had already changed clothes, makeup perfect again, smile sweet. "Oh, there you are," she said warmly. "Poor Emma. Are you feeling better now?" Her eyes found Jack's. Daddy was just overreacting, wasn't he? Jack said nothing. He carried Emma upstairs, feeling the way her little body tensed whenever Catherine's voice filled the air. After tucking her into bed, he sat for a moment, watching her small hand clutch the edge of a faded stuffed rabbit, Amanda's last gift before she died. "Daddy," Emma whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." "Please don't be mad at her. I'll be good. I promise." His throat tightened. "You didn't do anything wrong." But Emma only turned her face into the pillow, pretending to sleep. That night, Jack couldn't rest. He paced the hallway, replaying the scene in his mind. The scalding water, the fear in Emma's eyes. The two practiced calm in Catherine's voice. Images of Amanda surfaced, her gentle hands braiding Emma's hair, her soft voice reading bedtime stories, her laughter that filled the halls, now silent. He went to the nursery where his infant son, Noah, lay quietly in his crib. The boy was thinner than Jack remembered from his last brief visit home, his small chest rising and falling too slowly. The baby bottle beside him was half full. The milk curdled. "Why hasn't this been changed?" he muttered. From behind him, Catherine's voice answered, soft but edged with something hard. He fell asleep before finishing. "I didn't want to wake him." Jack turned. "He looks pale." She smiled. "Babies have off days, Jack. You're worrying too much." She moved closer, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "You've been gone so often. You forget how children are." Her words struck deep. He hated that she was right. He had been gone. Meetings, expansions, fundraisers. He thought he was doing it all for them, building a legacy that would secure their future. But as he looked at his son, something shifted inside him. The empire meant nothing if his children weren't safe within it. The next morning, he called Mrs. Rivera, the housekeeper who had been with them since before Amanda's death. "Has Emma been eating well?" he asked casually. There was a pause on the line. "She tries, sir." "What do you mean, tries?" Another pause. "Perhaps you should ask her yourself, Mr. Thornton." And the line went dead. That afternoon, Jack watched from his study window as Catherine played the role of doting stepmother. She smiled at Emma across the garden, her voice sugar-sweet as she called, "Hold the watering can properly, dear. Don't spill again, or you'll make a mess." Emma nodded quickly, clutching the can, though it was too heavy for her. When she stumbled, Catherine's smile didn't falter, but Jack saw the way her fingers tightened around the child's arm. Later, when Emma came in, her sleeves were damp and her smile was stiff. "How was gardening?" and he asked. "It was fun," she said quickly. "Catherine says I'm learning to be helpful." Her words sounded like an echo, practiced and hollow. Jack's heart sank. He knelt before her. "Sweetheart, you know you can tell me if something's wrong, right?" Emma's eyes darted toward the hallway where Catherine might appear at any moment. Then she forced a smile. "Everything's fine, Daddy." That night, as rain began to fall, Jack sat in his study, a baby monitor on his desk. From the small speaker, he heard faint voices from Emma's room. "Did you tell him?" Catherine's voice, calm. "No," Emma whispered. "I didn't." A pause, then a sharp sound, a slap, or something like it. "You'd better not. Or next time." Jack didn't wait. He stormed upstairs, but by the time he reached Emma's door, Catherine was sitting on the edge of the bed, reading from a book, smiling sweetly. "Oh, Jack, you startled me," she said lightly. "I was just telling Emma a story." Emma sat rigid, her eyes wet, but she nodded quickly when Jack asked if everything was okay. He stood there silent, watching them, until he noticed something small under the bed, a folded notebook, its pages frayed. He bent to pick it up, but Emma's hand shot out, grabbing it. "That's mine," she said, eyes wide. He hesitated. "Can I see it?" She shook her head, clutching it to her chest. "It's private." Catherine laughed softly. "You know how children are, Jack. They're little secrets." He forced a smile, but his chest burned with suspicion. Whatever truth hid in that notebook, he knew it was the truth he feared most. The storm never really ended that night. It only moved inside the Thornton house, hiding in corners, humming in the wires. Jack lay awake, listening to the rain strike glass, to the house breathe, to the small, uneven sounds that no one else seemed to hear. Every creak felt like a whisper he had ignored for too long. He went to the nursery first. Noah slept fitfully, his lips dry, his cheeks pale as paper. The bottle beside the crib held milk already separating into curds. Jack touched it and felt a strange heat, not from the milk itself, but from anger blooming quietly behind his ribs. He changed his son, warmed fresh milk, held him until the tiny heartbeat steadied. When Noah finally sighed into sleep, Jack stood in the dark, watching him breathe. How many nights like this had there been while he was away, chasing the next deal, the next expansion? He turned toward Emma's room. The door was almost closed, a sliver of light from the hall laying across the floor like a thin blade. He pushed it open gently. Emma slept curled on her side, the stuffed rabbit pressed to her face. On the floor, half hidden under the bed frame, the corner of the little notebook peeked out, the same one she had clutched so desperately earlier. Jack hesitated, his pulse thudding in his ears. Then, slow as if he were reaching into fire, he took it. Back in his study, the lamp's circle of light trembled. Jack opened the notebook, and the first words tore through him like physical blows. I will be good. I will not spill. I will not tell. Next page. She said hungry girls lie. She said hungry girls learn. He flipped faster. Crayon drawings, Emma and Noah. A tall woman in a robe. Water spilling from a tub. The words scrawled again and again. Too hot. Too hot. Too hot, they're hot. Jack dropped into his chair, his breath coming short. The clock on the wall ticked loud and steady. He turned one more page and found something dated just last week. Daddy called. I smiled like she said. She held my arm. I smiled big so he wouldn't see. He pressed his fist to his mouth to keep from crying out. The next morning, Catherine floated through breakfast in pale silk, humming, the picture of charm. Emma sat small at the table, spoon trembling in her hand. Jack watched her closely. Every few seconds, she glanced sideways toward Catherine as if awaiting silent permission to breathe. Eat, darling, Catherine said sweetly, eyes never leaving her phone. Children need discipline. Finish every bite. Yes, ma'am, Emma whispered. Jack's stomach turned. I'll drive her to school. How thoughtful, Catherine replied, flashing a smile too wide, too bright. On the drive, Emma's fingers twisted the rabbit's ear nervously. Daddy, she asked softly, will Catherine be mad if I don't come right home? He glanced at her. Why would she be? She said good girls don't waste time at school. Jack gripped the wheel tighter. You stay as long as you want, Emma. That's what good girls do. They learn. At the school gate, he crouched, brushed her hair back. If anything feels wrong, you tell Ms. Rodriguez, you understand? Okay. Emma hesitated, eyes darting away. Will you be here later? I promise. She nodded, the tiniest relief passing over her face before she ran toward the doors. Jack waited until the playground emptied, then went inside. Miss Rodriguez, the school counselor, greeted him with kind but wary eyes. Is everything all right, Mr. Thornton? I'm not sure, he admitted. I just need to know if Emma seems different. Ms. Rodriguez folded her hands. She's quiet, sometimes hungry. She keeps snacks in her pocket. Nothing obvious, but children tell us things with their behaviors that they can't say with words. Jack swallowed hard. If I asked you to watch her closely for a few days, would you? Yes, she said without hesitation. And if I notice anything concerning, I'll call you directly. Back home, Jack found Mrs. Rivera polishing silver in silence. The housekeeper was in her 60s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she looked up, her expression faltered. Has Emma been eating properly? He asked directly this time. Mrs. Rivera's cloth froze mid-wipe. She tries, sir. She eats quickly, like she's afraid it'll be taken away. I've left food in her room a few times when... She trailed off. Jack closed his eyes. Thank you for telling me. Mrs. Rivera hesitated, then reached into her apron. There's more you should know. She pulled out a small digital recorder. its plastic case cracked. I bought this because I didn't trust what I was hearing. This was recorded last week. She pressed play. Catherine's voice emerged, cold and clear. You'll smile on the call. You'll say you're happy. If you tell your father anything, hungry girls will learn. Emma's whisper followed. I'll be good. The recording ended. Silence filled the kitchen, thick as smoke. Jack's voice came rough with emotion. Keep that safe. Make a copy. I already have. That night, while Catherine soaked in a bath scented with jasmine, Jack searched through her office drawers. He found the household ledgers, pages of numbers that had never interested him before. The expenses glared up like accusations. Luxury boutiques, a private spa, jewelry, thousands in cash withdrawals, all under a secondary household account newly opened 8 months ago. Catherine's looping signature was on every page. He flipped further and found transfers from Amanda's Literacy Foundation, small but steady, every month. Funds stolen from his late wife's charity. He took photographs of everything. When Catherine emerged later in a cloud of perfume, she smiled, touching his shoulder. You're still working? Honestly, Jack, you live for those papers. He smiled back without warmth. So do you, it seems. She laughed, missing the edge in his voice. The next afternoon, Jack picked up Emma and drove her to Dr. Harris under the pretense of a follow-up for her burns. The doctor examined her gently. They're healing well, he said, but she's underweight for her age. Has her appetite been poor? She eats fine, Jack said carefully, when she's allowed to. Dr. Harris looked up sharply. I see. He glanced at Emma, who was examining a poster of puppies on the wall. Sweetheart, may I ask you something? Do you ever feel scared at home? Emma's small shoulders tensed. No, she said automatically, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't push further. When she left the room to pick a sticker from the front desk, Dr. Harris turned to Jack. I've seen these patterns before, he said gravely. Malnutrition, fear of speaking openly, burns that don't match the explanation given. You have reason to be concerned. I have a recording, Jack admitted, a diary, photos of financial records that show funds being diverted. Then act quickly. I'll document everything I've observed medically and testify if needed. But don't wait, Jack. Children this young can't protect themselves. Back home, Jack's pulse thudded steady as a drum. He called 2 people, Jennifer Brooks, a forensic accountant who had consulted for his company, and Alexis Carter, a family attorney known for her work protecting children. Jennifer answered first. You suspect embezzlement and abuse. Send me every statement you have. I'll analyze them immediately. Within hours, she replied with confirmation. You were right, Jack. The secondary account funnels money to a private security firm and a boutique law office run by Edward Morris. Does that name ring a bell? Jack's jaw tightened. Morris had courted his business years ago and been denied. Now he was working with Catherine behind Jack's back. Jennifer continued. The security firm shows inquiries about emergency travel with minors. Someone's planning something, Jack. And soon, based on the timeline I'm seeing. He thanked her and immediately called Alexis. The attorney's tone hardened as she listened to everything. The burns, the diary, the recordings, the financial trail. We will file for an emergency custody order first thing tomorrow morning, she said decisively. Tonight, keep the children close. Let her think nothing's wrong. Document everything. We need to move quickly before she suspects you're on to her. At dinner that evening, Catherine played her part beautifully, cooing, laughing, complimenting Emma's new hair ribbon from school. But Jack saw the micro gestures now, the tiny squeeze on Emma's shoulder when she chewed too slowly, the sharp glance that froze her mid-sip, the way Emma's eyes constantly sought Catherine's approval before each small movement. When Catherine said lightly, "No dessert tonight, she's had enough," Jack rose and fetched ice cream himself. He set the bowl before his daughter and said calmly, "She's growing. She needs proper nutrition." Catherine's fork paused in the air. "You spoil her, Jack. It's not good for discipline." "She's 7, he replied evenly. "She deserves some sweetness in her life." The rest of dinner unfolded in silence thick enough to chew. That night, as Catherine brushed her hair before the mirror, she remarked casually, "You're home an awful lot lately, Jack. No deals to chase?" "Miss my family," he replied, watching her reflection. "Realize what matters. Her reflection smiled, but her eyes in the glass were small and suspicious. The next day, Barbara Thompson, their quiet neighbor from across the street, appeared at the back door clutching her raincoat. "Mr. Thornton," she began nervously, "I don't mean to intrude, but last week I saw Emma standing on your balcony in the rain. No coat, no shoes. She looked punished. When I called out, Catherine dragged her inside and smiled at me like I'd imagined the whole thing. I should have said something sooner." Jack exhaled shakily. "You're saying something now. That matters, Mrs. Thompson." Barbara nodded and wrote down what she'd seen on an envelope, dated and signed. Jack scanned it and sent it to Alexis. Later, Mrs. Rivera brought another piece of evidence. A small note crumpled in the kitchen trash. "No candy for the girl. No milk after 6. Lock the door when I am gone." The handwriting was unmistakably Catherine's. Jennifer's detailed financial report arrived by noon. The withdrawals were timed perfectly with Jack's business trips, a pattern that mirrored his absences. And one payment stood out, a retainer to Morris's firm labeled Guardian Counsel. Alexis called minutes later. "She's planning a custody grab, possibly even kidnapping. The judge has agreed to hear us tomorrow afternoon for an emergency order. Until then, stay civil. Keep your children in sight at all times." Jack's body ran on adrenaline alone now. Every sound, every breath of air in the house felt charged with potential danger. When Emma came home from school, he took her to the library, the one Amanda had designed with floor-to-ceiling shelves and cozy window seats. The quiet aisles, the smell of paper seemed to soothe them both. He let her pick any book she wanted. She chose The Little Rabbit's Lantern, the story her mother used to read about finding light in the darkness. That night, as thunder rolled again outside, Jack sat in the hallway between the children's rooms. Catherine had gone out to dinner with friends. He waited, half listening to the wind, half to the soft, even breaths behind the doors. Near midnight, he heard a faint click at the front door. He rose silently. Through the crack of the banister, he saw Catherine slip inside, speaking in low tones on her phone. "Yes, after the weekend. Documents ready. He still suspects nothing." Jack felt a chill that no storm could bring. He stayed perfectly still, letting the words settle in his memory, letting her walk right past him toward the master bedroom. Morning arrived, silver and cold. Catherine greeted him with coffee and a kiss on the cheek as if the night before had never happened. "Big day at work?" she asked lightly. "Very big," he said. At 9:00 a.m., Jennifer texted, "Security firm confirmed surveillance cameras ordered under alias KT. Delivery due tomorrow." At 10 a.m., Ms. Rodriguez called from school. "Emma told me something today," she said hesitantly. "She said she hides crackers because sometimes dinner is too small. She cried when I asked if she was ever locked in her room. I thought you should know before I file my own report." "Thank you," Jack said hoarsely. He hung up and went to the nursery. Noah was awake but listless, his skin cool to the touch. Jack checked the bottle half filled beside the crib. Sour again. That was the moment something in him broke cleanly, like a bone resetting after being broken too long. He packed a diaper bag, tucked Emma's rabbit inside, and called Alexis. "We act today," he said firmly. "I won't wait." He sat through breakfast, answering Catherine's idle talk about parties and spa bookings. He watched her butter toast she never ate. At one point, she glanced at him sharply. "You're quiet today, Jack." "Just thinking." "About what?" "How everything can change in an instant." She smiled, satisfied and completely misunderstanding. By noon, rain started again, faint and whispering. Mrs. Rivera slipped him a small USB drive. "The camera in the hallway caught last night's conversation," she whispered. "It's grainy but clear. She was on the phone about papers, about taking the children." He gripped her hand. "You've done more than you know, Maria. Thank you." Catherine spent the afternoon packing a small suitcase, humming to herself. "Spa weekend," she explained breezily. "You'll manage without me, won't you, darling?" He nodded. "Of course." Inside, his mind was counting down the minutes. Alexis was filing the emergency custody petition as they spoke. Dr. Harris was submitting his medical documentation. Ms. Rodriguez and Barbara Thompson had sworn written statements. The judge had set an emergency hearing for the next morning. But first, they needed to ensure the children's immediate safety. Alexis had arranged for a private investigator, licensed and discreet, to monitor the house from the street. If Catherine tried to leave with the children, she wouldn't get far. That evening, Catherine insisted Emma practice her piano piece for an upcoming video call with Jack's parents. Jack sat nearby, pretending to read while watching every interaction like a hawk. When Emma missed a note, Catherine's hand twitched toward her. Again, she ordered, still smiling. You'll embarrass us all if you don't play it perfectly. I'll try, Emma whispered, fingers trembling over the keys. Jack closed his book and stood. That's enough. She's tired. Catherine turned, feigning surprise. We can't let her quit halfway, Jack. That teaches the wrong lesson. She's 7, he said evenly. Halfway is fine. Their eyes locked. For the first time, Catherine saw something unmovable behind his calm demeanor. Her smile faltered. Later, after the children were in bed, Jack stepped onto the balcony where the rain had eased into mist. The garden glistened below, quiet and silver. Amanda's bench gleamed faintly in the low light, its carved words catching droplets like tears. Light is always hidden in the plainest places. I see it now, he whispered. Behind him, a door opened. Catherine's voice came, smooth as silk. Talking to ghosts, Jack? He turned slowly. They answer more honestly than you do. Her expression chilled. Careful, you're sounding paranoid. Maybe, he said quietly. But paranoia keeps children alive. She blinked, taken off guard by his calmness, by the absence of the denial she expected. He walked past her without another word. In his study, he organized every document into a single folder. The diary scans, financial records, recordings, photos, witness notes. He labeled it simply, for court. Mrs. Rivera entered quietly. Everything's ready, sir. Yes, tomorrow morning. She nodded, her old eyes bright with purpose. Amanda would be proud of you, Mr. Thornton. He couldn't answer past the lump in his throat. As she left, he heard Catherine laughing on the phone again from down the hall. Yes, Edward, her voice carried. Tomorrow night. The passports are already in the safe. Once it's done, the trust is mine. Jack froze. Passports. He waited until Catherine was in the shower, then opened the safe in their bedroom. Inside lay 2 small envelopes labeled with Emma and Noah's names, next to a thick wad of cash and a folded document bearing Morris's firm letterhead. The title read, Temporary Guardianship Transfer. He photographed every page, then locked the safe again just as the water shut off down the hall. He barely slept. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to something he couldn't yet name. At dawn, he rose, dressed quietly, and went to the children's rooms. Emma stirred when he touched her shoulder. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. Is it morning? It's a new day, he said softly. We're going somewhere safe. She smiled faintly. Will Catherine come? No, he said. Not this time. Downstairs, Catherine hummed, packing her purse. Leaving early? She asked. Meeting with attorneys, he said truthfully. She smiled, unaware that her world was about to collapse. Oh, you and your work. He leaned down and kissed Noah's head. Keep him happy today. Always do, she said, and the lie hung in the air like perfume. Jack walked out, heart pounding, but not from fear anymore, from purpose. He met Alexis at the courthouse steps an hour later, folder in hand, storm clouds breaking overhead. The investigation was over. The evidence was complete. The real battle was about to begin. Morning light spilled across the polished courtroom floor as Jack Thornton stood beside Alexis Carter. The attorney's confident posture belied the gravity of what they were attempting. Emergency custody orders were rarely granted without overwhelming evidence. Remember, Alexis whispered, let the evidence speak. Judge Martinez is fair but demands precision. Jack nodded, the folder clutched in his hand like a lifeline. Inside lay the accumulated proof of Catherine's betrayal. Financial records, medical reports, diary pages, witness statements, pieces of a nightmare he'd failed to see forming around his children. The chamber's door opened. Judge Eleanor Martinez emerged, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Her gaze swept over Jack, assessing him not as the CEO of a renewable energy empire, but as a father seeking protection for his children. Mr. Thornton, she said, this court understands the urgency of your petition However, these are serious allegations against your wife. Proceed carefully. Jack stepped forward. His voice, accustomed to boardroom authority, wavered slightly as he recounted finding Emma in the scalding bath, the burns on her small arms, the fear in her eyes. The judge reviewed the medical report from Dr. Harris, her expression darkening. These photographs indicate second-degree burns. The weight chart shows consistent decline in both children. When Jack played the recording of Catherine threatening Emma, silence filled the courtroom. Emma's tiny voice promising to be good echoed in the stillness. Judge Martinez looked up. I've seen enough to warrant temporary action. This court grants emergency custody of both minor children to their father, pending a full hearing. Mrs. Thornton is to have no unsupervised contact with either child until that time. Relief washed over Jack like a physical wave. The first battle was won, but the war had just begun. Alexis wasted no time. We need to serve Catherine immediately before she realizes what's happening. The investigator is in position. If she attempts to leave with the children, she'll be intercepted. They move quickly, Jack's Tesla cutting through Chicago traffic. Rain had begun again, streaking the windows, turning the world fluid and uncertain. What happens now? Jack asked. We serve the papers. You take the children somewhere safe. Then we prepare for the full custody hearing. Alexis glanced at her phone. Catherine has retained Edward Morris as expected. He's ruthless, he'll attack your frequent absences, paint you as a neglectful father trying to assuage his guilt. Jack gripped the steering wheel. He can try. When they arrived at the house, the private investigator, Marcus Daniels, was parked discreetly across the street. He approached their car, rain darkening his shoulders. 2 suitcases by the front door, he reported. She's made 3 calls in the last hour, one to what appears to be a car service scheduled for late afternoon. Jack felt his stomach clench. They had arrived just in time. Inside the house, Catherine's laughter drifted from the kitchen. Jack found her packing snacks into a small bag, her movements quick and efficient. Noah sat in his high chair, picking listlessly at cereal pieces. You're back early, she said, smile fixed perfectly in place. Then she saw Alexis and the court officer behind him. Her smile faltered. Jack, what's this? The court officer stepped forward. Catherine Hayes Thornton, I'm here to serve you with an emergency custody order and temporary restraining order. Catherine's face transformed. The mask of sweetness cracked, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. This is ridiculous. Jack, what have you done? Jack moved to Noah, lifting his son from the high chair. The boy felt too light in his arms, his skin cool despite the warm kitchen. Where's Emma? He asked. Catherine ignored him, snatching the papers from the officer's hand. Emergency custody? On what grounds? I've been nothing but devoted to these children while you've been building your precious company. Emma, Jack repeated. Where is she? Upstairs, Mrs. Rivera answered from the doorway. I'll get her. Catherine's eyes narrowed at the housekeeper. You, she hissed. I should have known. Mrs. Rivera left without responding, her footsteps quick on the stairs. Catherine began reading the court order, her breathing accelerating with each page. When she reached the evidence list, the recordings, the financial records, the medical reports, her knuckles whitened. You've been spying on me? In my own home? You gave me no choice, Jack said quietly, holding Noah closer. The bathwater, Catherine. The locked door. The bruises Emma tried to hide. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't protect my children? Her laugh was brittle glass breaking. Protect them? You abandoned them for months while I did everything. Changed diapers, attended parent meetings, managed this house. Where were you when they cried at night? When they were sick? The accusation struck true, piercing Jack's armor of righteousness. He had been absent. He had failed them in that way. You're right, he admitted. I wasn't here enough. That's my failure, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to them. But what you did, Catherine, hurting them, terrifying them, that's unforgivable. Mrs. Rivera returned with Emma, who clutched her stuffed rabbit. The girl's eyes widened at the scene before her. The court officer, Alexis with her briefcase, Catherine's flushed face. Daddy, she whispered. Come here, sweetheart, Jack said, extending his free arm. Emma moved a step forward, but Catherine was faster. She grabbed Emma's shoulder, her smile returning, though her eyes remained cold. Emma, tell these people how happy you are. Tell them what a good mother I've been while Daddy was away working. Emma froze, her gaze darting between the adults. The familiar pattern reasserting itself, the command to perform, to lie. Jack saw her small shoulders tense, preparing to play her part. Emma, Jack said gently, you don't have to say anything you don't want to. No one will be angry, I promise. Time stretched between them. Rain tapped against the windows, punctuating the silence. Then almost imperceptibly, Emma moved. One small step away from Catherine, then another, until she stood beside her father. She didn't speak, but her choice was clear. Catherine's face contorted. After everything I've done for you, she spat. You ungrateful little... That's enough, Alexis interrupted. Mrs. Thornton, this order restricts you from approaching within 100 feet of either child. You have 1 hour to gather personal belongings and vacate the premises. This is my house, Catherine seethed. Actually, Alexis countered, the deed is solely in Mr. Thornton's name. The prenuptial agreement you signed is quite clear on property division. For a moment, Catherine seemed to deflate, reality crashing down around her. Then she straightened, composure returning like the armor sliding into place. Fine, I'll need to pack. The officer will accompany you, Alexis said. Standard procedure. As Catherine swept from the room, she paused beside Jack. This isn't over, she murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. Not even close. An hour later, Catherine was gone, the house emptier but somehow less tense in her absence. Emma sat at the kitchen island, picking at a sandwich Mrs. Rivera had made. She hadn't spoken since Catherine left. We should take Noah to Dr. Harris, Jack told Alexis. He doesn't look right. I'll make the call, Mrs. Rivera said, already reaching for the phone. Noah felt warm now in Jack's arms, too warm. His breathing had quickened, labored little gasps that made Jack's heart race with concern. Emma, Jack said softly, did she not feed Noah properly? Emma looked down at her sandwich, then at her brother. She said babies don't need much, that they get fat if you feed them too often. Her voice was barely audible. She said crying makes their lungs stronger. Rage surged through Jack, white-hot and consuming. He tamped it down, focusing on the immediate need. Dr. Harris agreed to see them immediately. As they prepared to leave, Emma suddenly ran upstairs. She returned moments later with her notebook clutched to her chest. I want to bring this, she said firmly. It has all the bad things in it. For the judge. Jack knelt to her level, throat tight with emotion. That was very brave of you to keep, Emma. It will help a lot. She nodded solemnly. Mom always said to write down important things, so I did. Amanda's wisdom living on through their daughter. Jack felt her presence then, stronger than it had been in months. Dr. Harris's face was grave as he examined Noah. Moderate to severe malnutrition and dehydration, he confirmed. He's running a fever of 102.4, and there are signs of an ear infection that's been untreated for some time. Will he be okay? Jack's voice sounded strange in his own ears. With proper care, yes, but he needs to be admitted. The dehydration alone is concerning, and we need to get antibiotics into his system immediately. As nurses prepared Noah for transfer to Children's Memorial Hospital, Dr. Harris took Jack aside. This level of neglect doesn't happen overnight, Jack. This is weeks, maybe months of inadequate nutrition. The words hit like physical blows. Weeks, months. While he attended board meetings, flew to conferences, chased expansion opportunities. I didn't know, Jack said, the inadequacy of those words burning in his mouth. I should have, but I didn't. Dr. Harris squeezed his shoulder. What matters is you know now and you're acting on it. Some parents never do. At the hospital, a social worker named Diane Chen interviewed Jack and Emma separately, standard procedure in suspected abuse cases. Emma clutched her rabbit throughout, answering questions in whispers, occasionally writing in her notebook when words failed her. She's remarkably resilient, Ms. Chen told Jack afterward, but she'll need therapy to process what she's experienced. The fear of hunger, the physical punishments, these leave psychological scars long after the physical ones fade. Jack nodded, watching through a glass partition as a nurse helped Emma pick a stuffed animal from a donation cart. His daughter's face lit briefly when she selected a small stuffed fox, the first genuine smile he'd seen in too long. "I'll find the best child psychologist in Chicago," he promised. "Good. And Jack," Miss Chen added gently, "consider talking to someone yourself. Parents in your situation often experience significant guilt and trauma too." He looked away. "I'll be fine." "Of course," she said, clearly unconvinced. "Just remember, taking care of yourself is part of taking care of them." Noah was admitted for IV fluids, antibiotics, and monitoring. Jack and Emma settled into the family suite attached to his room, Emma curled on a recliner with her new fox and old rabbit, Noah sleeping fitfully in the hospital crib. Outside, night had fallen, the city lights blurred by continuing rain. Jack's phone vibrated. Alexis. "Catherine's been served with the formal hearing notice," she reported. "It's set for next Monday. Morris has already filed a counter motion claiming you fabricated evidence and alleging parental alienation." Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. "Of course he has. We expected this. Morris plays dirty, but we have facts on our side. How's Noah?" "Admitted. Malnutrition, dehydration, untreated ear infection. The doctor says, with proper care, he'll recover fully, but it's another piece of evidence," Alexis finished. "I'll have the hospital send the records directly to my office." After hanging up, Jack sat in the dim room watching his children sleep. Emma whimpered occasionally, her face twitching with dreams. Noah's tiny chest rose and fell beneath the hospital blanket, each breath a small victory. How had he missed this? He'd built his company from nothing, navigated complex international deals, anticipated market shifts before they happened. Yet he'd failed to see the danger growing in his own home, threatening what mattered most. Amanda would have known. Amanda would never have let it happen. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her memory. "I'll make it right." Morning arrived in strips of pale light through the hospital blinds. Noah's fever had broken overnight. His color improved. The pediatrician on rounds seemed pleased with his progress. "We'll continue IV antibiotics today, but if he keeps improving, you might be able to take him home tomorrow." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing in her notebook. She seemed lighter somehow, as if Catherine's absence had lifted a physical weight from her small shoulders. Jack's phone rang again. Not Alexis this time, but Jennifer Brooks. "I've been digging deeper into Catherine's financials," the accountant said without preamble. "Jack, she's been planning this for nearly a year. The first transfers from Amanda's foundation began just 3 months after your marriage." Jack moved to the hallway to continue the call, keeping Emma in sight through the doorway. What exactly was she planning? Based on the money trail, a complete disappearing act. She's purchased 3 sets of identification documents through a contact at Morris's firm. She's made inquiries about properties in South America. And here's the most disturbing part. She took out a life insurance policy on you 6 months ago. $5 million payout. Cold dread pooled in Jack's stomach. "Are you saying she planned to—" "I can't prove intent," Jennifer said carefully. "But the pattern is concerning enough that I've shared my findings with law enforcement. This goes beyond divorce strategy, Jack. This looks like a potential criminal conspiracy." After the call ended, Jack stood frozen in the hallway, mind racing. Had Catherine actually considered? No, he couldn't allow himself to follow that thought to its conclusion. Not now, when the children needed him focused. He returned to the room to find Emma watching him, her eyes too knowing for a 7-year-old. "Is she coming back?" she asked. Jack sat beside her on the floor. "No, sweetheart, she's not coming back to the house." Emma considered this, small fingers tracing the edge of her notebook. "She said she would always find me. That hiding doesn't work." The simple statement chilled him more than Catherine's parting threat. "Emma, I promise you, she will never hurt you again. Never." His daughter looked at him with Amanda's eyes, intelligent, assessing. "You have to be careful too, Daddy. She gets very angry when she doesn't win." Out of the mouths of babes, Jack pulled Emma close, kissing the top of her head. "We'll all be careful, but we're together now, and that makes us stronger." Wednesday morning brought an unexpected visitor to the hospital. Barbara Thompson, the neighbor who had witnessed Emma on the balcony, arrived with a small gift bag and a determined expression. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said. "I wanted to bring something for the children, and to tell you I've officially filed my witness statement with your attorney." The gift bag contained a picture book for Emma and a soft blue blanket for Noah. Jack thanked her, touched by this simple kindness. I should have spoken up sooner, Barbara continued, watching as Emma examined the book. I saw things over the past few months. Little things at first, Catherine yelling at Emma in the garden, Noah crying for hours. I told myself it wasn't my business, that parenting is hard. It is hard, Jack agreed. But what she did wasn't parenting, it was abuse. Barbara nodded. My sister experienced something similar with her second husband. He was charming to everyone else, a monster behind closed doors. That's why I finally came forward. I recognized the pattern. As she prepared to leave, Barbara hesitated. There's something else. Yesterday afternoon, after she left your house, Catherine came to mine. She wanted me to retract my statement, said there had been a misunderstanding. When I refused, she became threatening, said I would regret interfering in her family. Jack straightened. Did you report this? Yes, the officer who took my statement added it to the file. I just thought you should know, she's not giving up. After Barbara left, Jack called Alexis immediately. The attorney was alarmed but not surprised. Witness tampering added to the list. I'll notify the judge and request additional protection. She paused. Jack, we should consider filing criminal charges. This is escalating beyond family court. One battle at a time, he said. Let's secure the children's safety first. Then we can discuss criminal proceedings. By Thursday morning, Noah was deemed well enough for discharge. His weight had improved slightly, the infection responding to antibiotics. The hospital pediatrician provided detailed care instructions and scheduled a follow-up appointment with Dr. Harris for the following week. As Jack signed the discharge papers, his phone buzzed with an alert from the home security system. Someone had attempted to access the front door. He called Marcus Daniels, who was maintaining surveillance on the house. Catherine showed up about 10 minutes ago, the investigator reported, tried her key, then rang the bell repeatedly. When no one answered, she circled to the back. Mrs. Rivera refused to let her in, cited the restraining order. Catherine left but seemed agitated. Jack glanced at Emma, who was helping a nurse pack Noah's few belongings. We need somewhere else to stay until the hearing. The house isn't safe. Already working on it, Marcus replied. I can recommend a secure location. Staff I trust. Let me make some calls. By afternoon, arrangements were made. Instead of returning to the Thornton estate, Jack and the children were escorted to a private residence in Lake Forest, owned by a retired security specialist who occasionally provided safe housing for high-profile clients in sensitive situations. The house was smaller than theirs, but warm and welcoming, with views of Lake Michigan and a fenced yard complete with a playset. Emma explored cautiously at first, then with growing enthusiasm when she discovered a window seat filled with books. Can we stay here forever? She asked, only half joking. We'll go home eventually, Jack assured her, when everything's settled. That evening, after the children were asleep, Emma in a bedroom decorated with sailboats, Noah in a portable crib beside her. Jack sat with Marcus in the kitchen, reviewing security measures. The property has a state-of-the-art system, Marcus explained. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced doors and windows. My team is monitoring remotely, and I have a colleague parked down the street. Seems excessive, Jack admitted. Marcus's expression remained professional, but his eyes conveyed concern. Jennifer Brooks shared her financial findings with me. The life insurance policy, the escape plans. I don't believe in taking chances when children are involved. Jack rubbed his face, fatigue settling deep in his bones. Do you think she'd actually try something, even with the restraining order? People become unpredictable when cornered. Catherine stands to lose everything, the lifestyle, the status, access to your wealth. More importantly, the hearing will expose her actions publicly. For someone who values appearance as much as she seems to, that's intolerable. They were interrupted by Jack's phone. Alexis again, her voice tight with urgency. Morris filed an emergency motion claiming you've kidnapped the children and violated the custody agreement. He's requesting an immediate hearing tomorrow morning, trying to force the children's return to Catherine's care before our Monday court date. Jack's exhaustion vanished, replaced by cold focus. On what grounds? He's claiming the original emergency order was obtained through fraudulent evidence. They're attacking the recordings, saying they were edited. They've also lined up character witnesses, friends of Catherine's, her mother Karen Wilson, even your former assistant Claire Bennett. Jack hadn't spoken to Claire since she'd left the company 6 months ago. They hadn't parted on the best terms. She'd been loyal to a fault, working punishing hours during the company's expansion. When she finally resigned, citing burnout, he'd been too consumed with the next deal to properly acknowledge her years of service. Claire would testify against me? The betrayal stung unexpectedly. Morris is good at finding leverage, Alexis said. People with grudges, or those susceptible to manipulation. But don't worry, Judge Martinez is still presiding, and she doesn't appreciate these tactics. Be at the courthouse by 8 tomorrow. And Jack, bring the children. The judge will want to see them. After hanging up, Jack stood at the kitchen window, staring at the dark lake beyond. The battle had intensified faster than he anticipated. Catherine was fighting with the desperation of someone with everything to lose. What frightened him most was knowing she was right. For her, everything was at stake, and people with nothing to lose were capable of anything. The emergency hearing Friday morning was tense from the outset. Edward Morris arrived with Catherine, who had transformed herself into the picture of maternal concern. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup, replaced by a modest blouse and subtle eyeshadow that emphasized the redness of her eyes that had clearly been crying, or at least convincingly appearing to. Jack sat with Emma beside him, Noah sleeping in a carrier at his feet. Emma clutched her notebook and rabbit, eyes fixed on the floor, refusing to look at Catherine. Morris spoke first, voice resonating with practiced indignation. Your Honor, my client has been the primary caregiver for these children for nearly 2 years. Mr. Thornton, by his own admission, travels constantly for business. Now, based on doctored recordings and the testimony of disgruntled household staff, he has effectively kidnapped the children and is hiding them at an undisclosed location. Alexis countered with methodical precision, laying out the medical evidence from 2 separate doctors, the financial records showing diverted funds, and Emma's journal with its devastating entries. She then played a new recording, Catherine threatening Barbara Thompson after the restraining order was issued. This is not a father kidnapping children, Alexis concluded. This is a father protecting them from documented abuse and neglect. Judge Martinez studied Catherine, who maintained an expression of wounded innocence. Mrs. Thornton, these allegations are extremely serious. Dr. Harris's affidavit indicates your stepson was suffering from malnutrition under your care. How do you explain this? Catherine's response was carefully measured. Noah has always been a fussy eater, Your Honor. I've taken him to several specialists. Jack is rarely home to witness the hours I spend trying to feed him. As for Emma's burns, it was an accident. Children sometimes exaggerate when encouraged by adults with agendas. The judge turned to Emma, her tone softening. Emma, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions. Would that be okay? Emma looked to Jack, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. Do you feel safe with your father? Emma nodded. Did you feel safe with Mrs. Thornton? A longer pause, then almost imperceptibly, Emma shook her head. Catherine made a small sound of protest, quickly silenced by Morris's hand on her arm. Emma, is there anything you want to tell me about living with Mrs. Thornton? The judge asked gently. Emma opened her notebook, turning to a specific page. She pushed it across the table toward the judge. I drew it, she said. Judge Martinez examined the crayon drawing. A bathtub, a tall figure standing over a small one, blue scribbles indicating water, and the words "too hot" written repeatedly in a child's uneven hand. The courtroom fell silent. Whatever doubts may have lingered about Emma's experience vanished in the raw honesty of that simple drawing. The judge closed the notebook carefully, returning it to Emma. Thank you for showing me, she said. You're very brave. She then addressed the attorneys. The emergency motion to return the children to Mrs. Thornton's care is denied. The temporary custody order remains in effect until Monday's full hearing. Additionally, Mrs. Thornton is ordered to surrender her passport to the court and refrain from any contact, direct or indirect, with witnesses in this case. Morris began to object, but Catherine placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Her eyes met Jack's across the courtroom. In that moment, the mask slipped entirely, revealing not grief or anger, but something colder, more calculated. A promise. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, a storm rolled in from the lake, thunder echoing across the water. Emma couldn't sleep, jumping at each crack and rumble. Jack sat with her in the window seat, watching lightning illuminate the churning waves below. Mom used to say storms were just the sky having big feelings, Emma said quietly. Too many to keep inside. Jack smiled. It sounded exactly like something Amanda would say. Your mom was very wise. I miss her. Emma's voice caught. Catherine said I wasn't supposed to talk about her anymore, that it made you sad. Oh, Emma. Jack pulled her closer. Talking about mom never makes me sad. I miss her too, every day. And you should always, always talk about her whenever you want to. Emma was quiet for a moment, watching the storm. She also said mom didn't really love us. That's why she left. The cruelty of it stole Jack's breath. Emma, look at me. Your mother fought so hard to stay with us. Her cancer, it was very strong, but she was stronger. She held on much longer than the doctors thought possible because she loved us that much. Never doubt that. Never. I know, Emma whispered. I didn't believe Catherine. Mom loved us too much to leave on purpose. Jack's throat constricted. From the mouths of babes, wisdom that adults sometimes missed. Daddy, Emma said after another pause, are we going to be okay? Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating her small face turned up to his. Trust and uncertainty mingled in her eyes. Yes, Jack said firmly, we're going to be okay. All of us, together. In that moment, he knew it was true. Whatever Catherine had planned, whatever Morris attempted in court, Jack would protect his children with everything he had. The shell of ambition and work that had encased him since Amanda's death had cracked open, revealing the father he needed to be, present, vigilant, unwavering. The storm continued, but within the safe harbor of his arms, Emma's eyes grew heavy. As she drifted toward sleep, she murmured, Mom's lantern story. Can you tell it? Jack closed his eyes, summoning Amanda's favorite bedtime tale. Once, there was a little rabbit who lived in a dark forest. Everyone told him to stay where it was safe, where he knew every tree and stone. But Little Rabbit had a secret, a tiny lantern that his mother had given him before she went away. The lantern that showed the way home, Emma whispered sleepily. That's right. No matter how dark the forest became, the lantern's light never failed. And do you remember what his mother told him about the light? Emma snuggled closer. That it's always hidden in the plainest places. You just have to be brave enough to look. Yes, Jack said softly, and brave enough to believe what you find there. Outside, the storm began to ease, thunder growing more distant. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Morris would regroup, Catherine would scheme, the custody battle would intensify. But tonight, in this moment, Jack had found his own lantern in the darkness, the unbreakable bond with his children, the fierce determination to protect them, and the memory of Amanda guiding them all home. Monday morning dawned clear and cold, sunlight glittering across Lake Michigan's surface. Jack stood at the safe house window, watching Emma help Mrs. Rivera prepare breakfast for Noah. His daughter moved with a newfound lightness, humming softly as she arranged banana slices on her brother's tray. 3 days away from Catherine had already begun to transform her. His phone vibrated. Alexis. We're all set for the hearing at 10, she reported. Our witnesses are prepared, evidence organized. Morris filed another motion this morning, trying to exclude Emma's journal, claiming it's hearsay, but Judge Martinez already denied it. And Catherine? Any word on what she's planning? Alexis hesitated. Nothing concrete, but Jennifer found something concerning. Catherine withdrew $50,000 in cash on Saturday. Marcus is increasing security for your arrival at the courthouse. The news settled like lead in Jack's stomach. Large cash withdrawals often meant one thing. Preparation for flight. I don't like this, Alexis. If she's planning to run, we've notified the judge. Her passport is supposed to be surrendered, but with Morris's connections, she could have alternates. Just focus on getting to court safely. Let us handle the rest. After ending the call, Jack joined his family at the breakfast table. Emma had drawn a smiley face in Noah's oatmeal, making the baby gurgle with delight. Such a small moment of normalcy, yet it felt miraculous after everything they'd endured. Big day today, Jack said, trying to sound casual. We'll all go to court, and the judge will make sure you stay with me from now on. Emma nodded, her expression serious. Will I have to talk about the bad things? Maybe, Jack answered honestly, but I'll be right there and so will Alexis. You just need to tell the truth. And Catherine? Will she be there? Yes, but she can't hurt you anymore. Remember what I promised? Emma straightened her shoulders. That we're together now, and that makes us stronger. Jack smiled, his chest tight with pride. That's right. Mrs. Rivera began clearing the dishes. The car will be here in 30 minutes. I've packed the children's things. Outside, Marcus Daniels was already checking the perimeter, his experienced eyes scanning for anything unusual. The security specialist had arranged for a private car service with bulletproof glass, an extreme measure that Jack had initially resisted, then accepted after Marcus shared his concerns. Better safe than sorry, Marcus had said. High-conflict custody cases can turn unpredictable fast. As they prepared to leave, Emma clutched her rabbit and notebook. Do I look okay, Daddy? She asked, smoothing her simple blue dress, one of the few outfits they'd brought from home. Jack knelt to her level. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Just like Mom. Her smile was worth everything he'd fought for. The drive to the courthouse proceeded without incident, Marcus following in a separate vehicle. Jack kept his eyes on the traffic around them, one arm protectively around Emma, the other supporting Noah's carrier. The baby had improved dramatically with proper nutrition and medication, his cheeks filling out, eyes bright with curiosity. They arrived at the courthouse's secure entrance, avoiding the media that had gathered at the main steps. Jack's high profile in Chicago's business community, combined with Catherine's connections to prominent social circles, had turned their private tragedy into public spectacle. Alexis met them in a private conference room, her calm demeanor a counterbalance to Jack's tightly wound nerves. Catherine and Morris are already inside, she informed him, arranging documents on the table. They've brought character witnesses, friends from her charity work, her personal trainer, the director of that children's foundation she volunteered with. All people who only saw what she wanted them to see, Jack noted bitterly. Exactly, but we have medical records, financial evidence, and first-hand witnesses, facts, not impressions. Alexis smiled at Emma, who was quietly drawing in her notebook. And we have the truth. At 5 minutes to 10, they prepared to enter the courtroom. As Jack lifted Noah's carrier, the conference room door burst open. Catherine stood in the doorway, flanked by a uniformed sheriff's deputy. Her appearance had transformed again, this time into calculated vulnerability, with a modest gray suit and minimal makeup that emphasized the shadows beneath her eyes. I need to speak with my husband, she announced. Alone. Alexis stepped forward. Mrs. Thornton, this is highly inappropriate. The restraining order has been temporarily lifted for courthouse proceedings, Morris interjected, appearing behind Catherine. Judge Martinez approved it 10 minutes ago. Jack handed Noah to Alexis. Wait outside with the children, he said quietly. I'll handle this. When they were alone, Catherine's vulnerable facade dissolved. Her eyes hardened, calculating. You've made quite a spectacle of us, Jack. The board must be thrilled. The company is the least of my concerns right now. She moved closer. It doesn't have to be this way. We could still salvage something from this mess. Salvage? After what you did to my children? Jack kept his voice low, controlled. After you stole from Amanda's foundation? Planned to disappear with Emma and Noah? Catherine's smile tightened. Those are allegations, not facts. And allegations can be withdrawn. What do you want, Catherine? She produced a document from her bag. A revised settlement. Quite generous, actually. Full physical custody returns to me. You get standard visitation names and every other weekend, some holidays. In exchange, you keep your company's reputation intact, and I don't pursue claims that might interest certain regulatory agencies regarding your overseas operations. Jack stared at her, genuinely stunned by her audacity. You can't possibly believe I'd agree to this. Think carefully, she warned. Once we enter that courtroom, there's no turning back. Every detail becomes public record. Your absences, your neglect, the way you buried yourself in work while I raised your children. The press will have a field day. You're right about one thing, Jack said, stepping closer. There is no turning back, not for me, and certainly not for you. I'll see you in court." As he reached for the door, Catherine caught his arm. "Jack, wait." For just an instant, something genuine flickered in her eyes. Desperation, perhaps even fear. Then it vanished, replaced by cold fury. "This isn't over," she whispered. "Not until I say it is." The courtroom hushed as Jack entered with Emma and Noah. Catherine and Morris were already seated at their table, a row of well-dressed supporters behind them. Jack recognized several prominent Chicago socialites, along with Catherine's mother, Karen Wilson, a thin, elegant woman whose calculating eyes tracked their every move. Judge Martinez called the court to order. "This is a full custody hearing regarding minors Emma and Noah Thornton. Given the sensitive nature of the allegations and the children's ages, I'll be conducting this hearing with as much privacy as possible. Any disruptions will result in immediate removal from my courtroom." Morris presented Catherine's case first, painting her as a devoted stepmother who had sacrificed her career to care for another woman's children while their father built his business empire. He introduced character witnesses who testified about Catherine's volunteer work, her generous donations to children's charities, her perfect image as a Chicago socialite. "Mrs. Thornton has been nothing but dedicated to these children," Morris concluded. "The allegations against her are the desperate fabrications of a guilty father trying to compensate for years of neglect." Alexis rose next, her approach methodical and devastating. She called Dr. Harris first, who testified about Emma's burns and Noah's malnutrition. Mrs. Rivera followed, describing the locked bedroom, the withheld meals, the recordings of threats. Ms. Rodriguez from Emma's school detailed the child's withdrawn behavior and hoarded food. Throughout it all, Catherine maintained a mask of wounded dignity, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Jack watched her performance with a strange detachment, wondering how he had ever missed the hollowness behind her charm. Then came the financial evidence. Jennifer Brooks presented a detailed analysis of Catherine's systematic theft from Amanda's foundation, the hidden accounts, the plans for disappearance. When Jennifer mentioned the life insurance policy, a murmur ran through the courtroom. Morris objected vehemently. "This is character assassination, Your Honor. These financial matters have no bearing on Mrs. Thornton's fitness as a parent." "I disagree, Counselor," Judge Martinez replied. "Intent and pattern of behavior are highly relevant in determining parental fitness." The momentum had clearly shifted, but Morris had saved his strongest counterattack. He called Claire Bennett, Jack's former assistant, to the stand. Claire avoided Jack's eyes as she was sworn in. She testified about his punishing work schedule, the missed birthdays and school events, the weeks spent abroad while Catherine managed the household alone. "Mr. Thornton was rarely home before 8 in the evening," Claire stated. "He traveled at least 15 days each month. During Emma's bout with pneumonia last winter, he attended a conference in Dubai instead of coming home." Jack winced. The accusation was technically true. He had continued with the Dubai conference, believing Catherine had everything under control at home. The memory of that decision now filled him with shame. Morris pressed the advantage. "In your professional opinion, Ms. Bennett, who was more engaged with the children's daily care, Mr. Thornton or Mrs. Thornton?" "Objection," Alexis interjected. "Calls for speculation." "I'll allow it," Judge Martinez ruled, "but tread carefully, Mr. Morris." Claire hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Thornton handled all the day-to-day parenting. Mr. Thornton was absent physically and emotionally." Jack felt the words like blows, not because they were unfair, but because they contained enough truth to wound deeply. During a brief recess, Alexis found Jack staring out the courthouse window. "Claire's testimony hurt us," she acknowledged. "But it's not fatal. The judge understands the difference between an absent parent and an abusive one." Jack turned to her. "I was absent. That's the truth." "Yes, you were, and you're taking responsibility for that now. That's what matters." When court resumed, Morris called Catherine to testify. She presented herself as the victim of a vengeful husband, a woman who had only tried her best to fill the impossible shoes of the children's sainted biological mother. "I love those children as my own," Catherine insisted, voice breaking artfully. "I did everything for them while Jack built his company. Yes, I was strict sometimes. Children need structure. But abuse? Never." Morris produced photographs of family outings, birthday celebrations, moments that painted a picture of domestic harmony. Jack recognized the careful curation, the way Catherine had always insisted on documenting these occasions, creating evidence of perfect family life. "Mrs. Thornton," Morris asked, "did you ever intentionally harm Emma or Noah?" "Never," Catherine answered, meeting Jack's eyes across the courtroom. "I only wanted us to be a family." Then came cross-examination. Alexis approached Catherine with deceptive gentleness. "Mrs. Thornton, you testified that you love these children as your own. If that's true, can you explain why Noah was admitted to Children's Memorial with severe malnutrition after just 3 days in his father's care?" Catherine's composure faltered slightly. "Noah has always been a difficult feeder. I consulted specialists." "Which specialists exactly?" "We have no record of appointments beyond Dr. Harris, who testified he repeatedly expressed concerns about Noah's weight loss." "I don't recall their names offhand," Catherine replied, smile tightening. "There were several." Alexis nodded, then switched tactics. "Let's discuss the emergency travel arrangements you researched. Why would a devoted stepmother need information about leaving the country with minor children on short notice?" "I was planning a surprise vacation," Catherine countered smoothly. "A Disney cruise for Emma's birthday." "A surprise vacation that required cash withdrawals totaling over $200,000 in the past 6 months? That necessitated alternative identification documents?" Morris objected, but the damage was done. Catherine's testimony continued to unravel under Alexis's precise questioning. By the time she stepped down from the witness stand, the mask of maternal concern had cracked, revealing glimpses of the calculated manipulator beneath. The final scheduled witness was Jack himself. As he took the stand, he felt a strange calm descend. The truth, however painful, was his only obligation now. "Mr. Thornton," Alexis began, "please describe your relationship with your children before your marriage to Catherine." Jack took a deep breath. "After Amanda died, I retreated into work. It was easier than facing the emptiness at home. I convinced myself I was building security for Emma and Noah, but the truth is I was avoiding my grief by burying myself in the company." "And you recognize this was a failure on your part?" "Absolutely. I failed my children when they needed me most. That's something I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make right." "What changed? What made you finally see what was happening in your home?" Jack's eyes found Emma, who sat quietly with Mrs. Rivera, protectively cradling her rabbit. "I came home unexpectedly and found my daughter in a bath of scalding water, terrified and in pain. I saw the fear in her eyes, not just of the hot water, but of Catherine. And in that moment, it was like waking from a long sleep. I began to notice everything I'd been blind to: Noah's weight loss, Emma's changed behavior, the tension in the house. As cross-examination began, Morris went for the jugular. "Mr. Thornton, isn't it true that you're motivated by guilt? That these accusations against my client are your way of compensating for years of parental neglect?" Jack met his gaze steadily. "I am guilty of neglect. I put my company before my family, and I'll always regret that. But these aren't accusations, they're facts. Medical records don't lie. Financial transactions don't lie." He paused. "And 7-year-olds don't create elaborate journals documenting abuse unless they're actually experiencing it." Morris changed tactics. "You've made enemies in business, Mr. Thornton. People who would love to see you distracted by personal scandal. Isn't it possible Catherine is being framed to destabilize your company?" The suggestion was so absurd that Jack almost laughed. "No, Mr. Morris, it's not possible. The only conspiracy here is the one your client orchestrated against my children and my late wife's foundation." As testimony concluded, Judge Martinez announced a brief recess before final arguments. Jack rejoined Emma and Noah, helping Mrs. Rivera prepare the baby's bottle. The morning had taken its toll. Emma was quiet, Noah fussy. "You did great," Jack assured his daughter. "It's almost over." "Is the judge going to believe us?" Emma asked, her voice small. "I think so. She seems very wise." Emma considered this. "Catherine's mother keeps looking at me funny." Jack glanced toward the courtroom, where Karen Wilson stood in deep conversation with Morris, her expression tight with displeasure. "Don't worry about her," he said, though something about the woman's intensity unsettled him. When court resumed for closing arguments, an unexpected development occurred. Morris requested permission to call a surprise witness. Your Honor, Karen Wilson, Mrs. Thornton's mother, has crucial testimony that bears directly on these proceedings. Judge Martinez frowned. This is highly irregular, Mr. Morris. Why wasn't Mrs. Wilson on your witness list? She came forward only this morning with information she felt compelled to share. The judge considered briefly. I'll allow it, but I caution you, Mr. Morris, this better be substantive. Catherine's expression flickered with something like uncertainty as her mother took the stand. Karen Wilson, impeccably dressed in Chanel, settled into the witness chair with rigid posture. Mrs. Wilson, Morris began confidently, you've known Jack Thornton since his marriage to your daughter. What can you tell us about his relationship with the children? Karen's gaze swept the courtroom, lingering briefly on Catherine, then settling on the judge. I'm not here to talk about Jack Thornton, she said clearly. Morris faltered. I'm sorry. I'm here to talk about my daughter. The courtroom stilled. Morris approached the witness stand hurriedly. Mrs. Wilson, we discussed your testimony. Yes, we did, Karen interrupted. And then I spent last night looking at photographs of that baby, Noah, in the hospital, looking at the burns on Emma's arms. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, I need to speak the truth regardless of what counsel has prepared me to say. Judge Martinez nodded. Please continue, Mrs. Wilson. Karen clasped her hands tightly. Catherine was always difficult from childhood, charming when she needed to be, cruel when it suited her. Her father and I made excuses, smoothed things over. We taught her to maintain appearances above all else. Catherine stood abruptly. Mother, stop this immediately. Mrs. Thornton, sit down, the judge ordered. Continue, Mrs. Wilson. When Catherine was 16, she was left to babysit her half-brother, my son, from my second marriage. Mark was 3 at the time. Karen's voice wavered for the first time. When I returned home, Mark was locked in a closet. He'd been there for hours, crying until he made himself sick. Catherine claimed he'd misbehaved. Morris approached the bench frantically. Your Honor, this is completely irrelevant. It is entirely relevant, Karen countered, because it wasn't an isolated incident. Catherine resented Mark for replacing her as the center of attention. She would hide his toys, throw away his food, tell him no one wanted him. She looked directly at her daughter. Sound familiar, Catherine? The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. Order! Catherine's face had transformed. All pretense of maternal concern vanished. You treacherous bitch, she hissed at her mother, audible in the sudden silence. After everything I've done for you. Mrs. Thornton, Judge Martinez's voice cut through the tension. Control yourself or you will be removed from my courtroom. Morris attempted damage control. Your Honor, Mrs. Wilson clearly has her own agenda here. Whatever childhood incidents she's referring to have no bearing on this case. I disagree, the judge replied. Mrs. Wilson, please continue. Karen squared her shoulders. There were other incidents over the years. When Catherine didn't get what she wanted, people suffered, particularly those weaker than her. I enabled it. I helped her craft the perfect image, taught her how to charm her way out of consequences. She looked at Jack. When she married you, I thought perhaps she'd changed. You were successful, powerful, her equal in many ways. But when I visited last Christmas and saw how she spoke to Emma when you weren't in the room, I knew it was happening again. And you said nothing? Judge Martinez asked. I convinced myself I was imagining things, that I was being unfair to my daughter. Karen's composure cracked. I was a coward until I saw those hospital photos, and I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Catherine's attorney attempted to discredit Karen's testimony during cross-examination, suggesting family estrangement and financial motivations. But the damage was done. The last facade of Catherine's defense had crumbled from within. During final arguments, Morris struggled to regain momentum, focusing on Jack's admitted neglect and the circumstantial nature of the evidence against his client. Alexis, by contrast, delivered a measured summary of the overwhelming case against Catherine, ending with a simple request for the children's safety. Judge Martinez retired to her chambers, returning 40 minutes later with her ruling. This court has heard extensive testimony regarding the care of Emma and Noah Thornton. The evidence of neglect and emotional abuse is both disturbing and conclusive. She turned to Catherine. Mrs. Thornton, your actions represent a profound betrayal of the trust placed in you as these children's caregiver. The court finds clear and convincing evidence that you have endangered their physical and emotional well-being. The judge continued, sole physical and legal custody of both minor children is hereby granted to their father, Jack Thornton. Mrs. Thornton is prohibited from any contact with the children without court approval and supervision. Furthermore, this court is referring evidence of financial misconduct to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Catherine sat motionless, her expression unreadable. Morris leaned toward her, whispering urgently, but she seemed beyond hearing. Mr. Thornton, Judge Martinez continued, while the court acknowledges your past neglect, your recent actions demonstrate commitment to your children's welfare. However, parenthood requires more than crisis intervention. These children need consistent presence and care going forward. Yes, Your Honor, Jack agreed. They have it. They will always have it. As the courtroom began to clear, Catherine suddenly moved toward Emma, who shrank against Mrs. Rivera. You ungrateful little, Catherine began, only to be blocked by Alexis and a court officer. That's enough, Mrs. Thornton, the officer warned. Catherine's gaze shifted to Jack, hatred burning behind her eyes. This isn't finished, she whispered, before being escorted from the courtroom. Outside, rain had begun to fall again, washing the city in shifting grays. Jack held Noah close, Emma's hand clutched in his as they waited for their car under the courthouse portico. The battle was won, but victory felt hollow amid the wreckage of trust and security the children had endured. Where do we go now, Daddy? Emma asked, watching raindrops race down marble columns. Home, Jack said. We go home. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of readjustment. Catherine faced additional legal troubles, an indictment for embezzlement from Amanda's foundation, charges of witness intimidation regarding Barbara Thompson. She eventually accepted a plea deal that included restitution and probation, avoiding jail time but permanently severing any claim to the children or Thornton assets. For Jack, the greater challenge lay in rebuilding what had been broken, not just in the 18 months of Catherine's presence, but in the grief-stricken months before her, when he'd first begun his retreat from fatherhood. Emma started therapy with Dr. Lauren Collins, a child psychologist specializing in trauma. Twice-weekly sessions slowly helped her process what she'd experienced, though nightmares continued to wake her. On bad nights, Jack would find her standing in his doorway, rabbit clutched tight. The water's too hot again, she would whisper, and he would make room beside him, keeping the light on until she fell back asleep. Noah thrived under consistent care. By summer, he had transformed into a chubby, laughing baby, hitting developmental milestones with enthusiasm. His first clear word, duh, reduced Jack to tears in the middle of the kitchen. The professional reckoning came in July. Thornton Renewables had weathered the publicity storm of the custody battle, but Jack's extended absence had created leadership challenges. The board called an emergency meeting to discuss the company's direction. We need to address the elephant in the room, Richard Bailey, the CFO began. Jack, your personal situation has understandably required your attention, but the Asian expansion can't wait any longer. We need you in Singapore for at least 2 months to close these deals. The old Jack would have immediately begun planning the trip. The new Jack looked at the faces around the table and made a different calculation. I can't leave the country for 2 months, he said simply. My children need stability right now. Murmurs circulated around the table. Richard cleared his throat. We sympathize, Jack, but the company needs its CEO fully engaged. Perhaps it's time to consider whether you can effectively balance both roles. The challenge hung in the air. Jack thought about what awaited him at home. Emma's piano recital that weekend, Noah's swimming lessons, bedtime stories, and breakfast conversations. Simple moments that now seemed infinitely precious. I've been considering that balance as well, Jack said, which is why I'm stepping back to chairman. Melissa Chen has been running operations effectively as COO for months. She should be promoted to CEO with my full support. Shock rippled through the boardroom. Jack continued, I'll remain involved strategically and lead the investment committee. But my family needs me present, not just physically, but emotionally. This company was built to last beyond any single person, including me. Monsieur, the transition wasn't simple, but it was right. Jack found unexpected fulfillment in his recalibrated life. Mornings at home before heading to shortened workdays, evenings entirely devoted to his children. The empire didn't crumble. In fact, with Melissa's leadership, it thrived in new directions. 6 months after the custody hearing, Emma's nightmares began to subside. Her journal, once filled with fear, now contained stories and drawings of adventures with her father and brother. Dr. Collins noted significant progress in her therapy sessions. She's developing healthy coping mechanisms, the psychologist explained. The fact that she feels secure enough to express negative emotions without fear of punishment is a tremendous sign of healing. That evening, as Jack tucked Emma into bed, she asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, do you think Mom can see us now?" Jack sat on the edge of her bed. "What do you think?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think yes. I think she's like the little rabbit's lantern. You can't always see it, but the light is still there." Jack smiled, throat tight with emotion. "That's beautiful, Emma. I think you're right. I was scared to talk about Mom before," she admitted. "Catherine said it made you sad." "Talking about Mom never makes me sad," Jack assured her. "It keeps her with us." Emma nodded, eyes growing heavy. "Can we visit her garden tomorrow? I want to show Noah the daisies." "Of course we can." 1 year after finding Emma in that scalding bath, Jack stood in Amanda's garden behind their home. The spring afternoon was mild, sunlight filtering through new leaves. Emma knelt beside the flower bed they had planted together, guiding Noah's chubby hands as he patted soil around daisy seedlings. "Gentle, Noah," she instructed with big sister authority. "They're just babies." Noah grinned, dirt smudging his cheeks as he babbled happily. At 22 months, he was sturdy and confident, no trace remaining of the listless infant Jack had rescued. Mrs. Rivera approached with lemonade on a tray. "Children, come wash your hands for a snack." As they raced toward the house, Jack remained in the garden, gaze falling on Amanda's bench. The carved inscription caught the light. Light is always hidden in the plainest places. He sat, feeling the warm wood beneath his palms. The company continued to thrive under Melissa's leadership. He worked reasonable hours now. Focus shifted to sustainable projects in the charitable foundation that carried Amanda's name, properly managed and expanded. The most profound changes, however, weren't professional but personal. He had learned to listen, really listen, to his children, to recognize Emma's quiet accomplishments as worthy of celebration as any business deal, to appreciate Noah's determined efforts to keep pace with his sister. From the house came the sound of laughter. Emma teaching Noah some new game. Jack closed his eyes, letting the sunlight warm his face. The darkness hadn't vanished entirely. There were still difficult days, questions about Catherine that would need answering as the children grew older. But those challenges no longer seemed insurmountable. Amanda had been right. The light was always there, hidden in the plainest places. A child's laughter, a seedling breaking through soil, the quiet certainty of being exactly where he was meant to be. Jack opened his eyes, watching a butterfly land briefly on a daisy before continuing its journey. The past couldn't be changed, but the future remained unwritten. And in that moment, surrounded by Amanda's flowers and the distant voices of their children, he knew with absolute certainty that they would be all right. The storm had passed. The light remained.